Okay guys, we're back with another video. So today we're going to be reviewing my 2023 year in books. I read a total of 37 books this year, almost 38. I am in the middle of one that I am about to finish. But I read 37 books. My goal for this year was 35 and I surpassed that. This is the most books I've ever read in any reading year. I am so happy that I surpassed it. I honestly want to reach 40. I have a couple more books and it is December 14th today. So I have a couple more weeks until the new year. I think maybe in 2024 I'll probably aim for 40. I try and do like 5 book increments because I don't know what the year is going to bring me, if I'm going to be super busy or what. I did read a majority of these off my physical TBR, but I did read a lot on my Kindle as well. But first I'm just going to go through my Goodreads year in books. You can read that. But I read 14,390 pages, 37 books read. And my shortest book was A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas, so that was 272 pages, and that is part of the ACOTAR series. My longest book was 703 pages. That was A Court of Wings and Ruin, also by Sarah J. Maas. That is also part of the ACOTAR series. My average book length was 388. My most shelved book was Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. And my least shelved book was Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. My average rating for 2023 was 4.2. That's really good. I feel like I'm very lenient with my ratings, and I always give high ratings, and then I think back on the book and I can't remember anything that happened. So maybe in 2024 I'll become more strict with my ratings, I guess, because I feel like I'm very quick to give a 5-star rating, and it just... I can't even remember what happened in the book. But my highest rated on Goodreads, or the highest rated on Goodreads, not my highest rating, but was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. That has a 4.67 average. And my first review of the year was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I never write a review. I always just do like the star rating, but I had to for this one. It was 6 stars. It was so good. And that's it for the recap. I'm just going to go through each stack and mention the ones on my Kindle. I have 2 very large stacks here of all the physical copies that I read in 2023. First book I read of the year was Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I remember I got this one for Christmas last year, and it gives winter vibes. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars, and it's about a couple that goes on a retreat to somewhere that is very secluded, and there's a huge snowstorm, and then somehow things keep happening in this, I think it's an Airbnb that they're staying in a church that was like a converted church or something. I just remember this one was a thriller. I did enjoy it. Thinking back on it now, almost a year later, I vaguely remember what happens. I know that there's like another person involved and weird things start happening, and that's kind of just the gist that I remember on that one. And then the next book I read was Shatter Me by Tahereh Mafi, and this is the first book in the Shatter Me series. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. I do want to continue the series. This one was very quick to read, very easy to understand, not a lot of world building. I can understand why people really like this series, but I just found it kind of boring. Not much really happens. It's about Juliet, who has a lethal touch. So if she touches somebody, they die. And she's basically held captive by the reestablishment, and they are planning to use her as a weapon, essentially, but then she escapes. So it's just about her journey of escaping, and there's definitely a love triangle. I know it goes deeper into that in the series, but that's just the first book. I've only read the first book. I do have the second book on my physical TBR, though. The next book that I read in 2023 was My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. I gave this one, I think it was 4 out of 5 stars. 4 out of 5 stars. And this one was good. Not much happens. I honestly, thinking back to it now, I'd probably give it a 3. I mean, if you like just, I guess, things that don't really happen in books, this would be the one for you. I can't remember too much about it. I know she just deals with things having to do with mental illness and just wanting to sleep the whole year away, basically. And it's just, I think she's rich too, so she's a rich artist, so she just tries to sleep her year away. That's really all I remember from this one. I feel like it was a quick read. I feel like I got through it pretty fast. Very interesting. Like, I've never read a book like this one before. And then the next book that I have, that I read in 2023, was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This one was very, very good. Second book in the ACOTAR series. I loved ACOTAR, the first book, so much. This one is not my favorite though. I'll get to my favorite later on. And I was just put so much into a slump that I just couldn't do it. I was like, I need a really long break from the rest of the series because I couldn't get through it for some reason. Even though I really enjoyed this one. I know that's kind of like an unpopular opinion because a lot of people love this book in particular. But for me, I just couldn't get through it. I don't know what it was. Maybe the length was intimidating me. I don't know. Nonetheless, I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars because I do love the series. I love the characters, the world building. It was just very long. Like, too long, in my opinion. I know that's a very unpopular opinion, but it was very long for me. The fourth book that I actually read was The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. I forgot about that because I read it on my Kindle, but that was actually the fourth book that I read, and A Court of Mist and Fury was the fifth book. And that one I gave 5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. Perfect, exactly what you need. Quick thriller. It's on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have that, very quick to read. I loved it. Great thriller. I still think about it. And there is a sequel that I did read later on in the year. But I highly recommend that one for if you're looking for just a quick thriller. Very, very good. So that was actually the fourth book I read, and A Court of Mist and Fury was the fifth book that I read. The sixth book that I read this year was also on my Kindle, and it was If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. That one I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I liked the dark academia, and I think that was the first dark academia read that I've ever read. I liked that concept, but I did not like all the Shakespeare talk. I found myself skimming through. I still think about the book, so if you are into Shakespeare or dark academia, I would still read it, but I just could not get over the Shakespeare. I literally just skimmed through it. I did not read really any of that. Other than that, I did enjoy it, and I gave 3 out of 5 stars, like I said. The seventh book that I read this year was Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. So good. This is YA. It's about Liz and Wes. They are, I guess, kind of enemies. They are neighbors. It's so good, though. It's enemies to lovers, and it's just the perfect Valentine's Day read. That's when I read this, was around Valentine's Day. Perfect romance. So good. Very heartfelt. I still think about them to this day, and I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It was so good. And then the next book I read was Exes and O's by Amy Lea. This one is a part of a series. I think it's like the Influencer series. I did not read the first one. This is the second book. I read this one around Valentine's Day as well, and this is about Tahereh and Trevor, and they are roommates, and she is basically on a journey to redate all of her ex-boyfriends to find... It's just about her journey to find the one. And, of course, they end up kindling a romance in between the two of them. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. Very good. Highly recommend still. It's just a cute romance read and around February it did its job. That's exactly what I wanted. It was really good, so I definitely recommend that one. The 9th book that I read this year was If He Had Been With Me by Nowlin. And this one I read on my Kindle as well. It's also on Kindle Unlimited. And I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Very nostalgic, very sad. I don't think about it as much as I thought I was going to, because I know a lot of people really love this book and really connected with it on a level, which I did because it is very nostalgic. It's about these 2 kids that grew up together. They were neighbors, their moms are best friends, and it's kind of friends that grow apart but then become lovers. And then there's a tragic ending, which you find out the first page of the book. Okay, literally while editing this video, I completely forgot to mention that I also read The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. I read this in February for Valentine's Day, and this one I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. I did really love this book as well. I can't believe I forgot to mention it because I love Better Than the Movies, so I had to pick this one up too. And yeah, I loved it. I had to add that in there. I'm so sorry that I forgot about it. I'm sorry, Lynn Painter, I still love you. But yeah, I also read this book too. The next book that I read this year, my 10th book, was The Housemaid's Secret by Freida McFadden, and I also read this on my Kindle. I gave this one, I think, 4 out of 5 stars. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. It was really good. Not as good as the first, but I did very much enjoy it. If you're looking for just quick thrillers, Freida McFadden is the go-to. All her books are on Kindle Unlimited. I read a lot of them actually early on in the summer, springtime, and you'll find out my ratings on those ones. But just very quick, easy to get through. If you're looking for a last minute book for 2023, I recommend one of her books, definitely. And the next book that I read was Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This one I also read on my Kindle, and I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the town of Knockemout. So it is basically about this girl that goes to the town that her twin sister lives in, and then her twin sister ends up stealing her car and going missing. But everybody in the town thinks that she's her twin sister, but they're the complete opposite. Her twin sister, causes a lot of trouble, just is unreliable, not a good person overall. Whereas our main character is the complete opposite. She ends up taking care of her twin sister's child that she kind of abandoned, and then a romance forms between her and somebody in the town. There were so many characters. I loved the relationships that she builds and how she kind of integrates herself into the town. I will say this one was quite long, like way longer than it needed to be. That's what's kind of refraining me from starting the other books in the series. I know they're very well loved and very high rated. They're quite long, like I said. And I found myself at times just like, okay, this just needs to be over. But other than that, it was great. Again, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Maybe looking back on it now, I'd probably give it 3. Nonetheless, it was good. I enjoyed it. The next book that I read was Survive the Night by Riley Sager. And this book was very good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I love Riley Sager. I've read so many of his books. And again, he is just so good at writing crazy twists and turns. Thrillers are one of my favorite genres. And I have to read every one of his books. I have read most of them. There's a couple that I have on my physical TBR that I will definitely get to in 2024. But thrillers were a big part of my summer. I read a lot of them. This one was really good. I didn't see the end coming. This one takes place in 1991, and it's about Charlie and Josh. So Charlie is a college student, and on her college campus there is a killer on the loose. I believe the killer killed her friend, so she's going home to kind of deal with the grief, if I remember correctly. And she catches a ride with Josh, who is going to drop her off on the way, basically. He's driving home as well. And she is just trying to decide the whole time if he's the killer. Yeah, this one just takes place over one night in a car with 2 strangers. So that one was really good. And then the next book I read was on my Kindle. This was book number 13, and it was Never Lie by Freida McFadden. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. This one was very good. Honestly, looking back on it now, I can't really remember what it's about, but I know I enjoyed it. The next book I also have is The Inmate by Freida McFadden. That one I gave 3 out of 5 stars. Again, looking back on it now, do I remember what it's about? No. but Freida McFadden is just the queen of thriller, and I have to read all of her books as well. All of her books, Kindle Unlimited, like I've said 20 times in this video already, but highly recommend still. And book number 15 was Stephen King's Billy Summers. This one I feel like I read so long ago. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I still think about this. I still think about the characters in this book. I love Stephen King. He is just so good at horror. This one's not really horror though. It's more about an assassin that gets hired to assassinate somebody, and I will say I only gave this one 4 out of 5 stars because it was a little bit too long. It did not need to be this long. It was almost 500 pages. Other than that, I enjoyed it. The next book that I read was The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I did have the physical copy. I gave it to a friend. I would probably lower my rating for that one now because I don't really remember what it was about. I know it's about a converted sanatorium into a hotel. Basically a murder mystery, so if you like that. But again, I feel like I would lower my rating to 3 stars because I honestly don't remember what happens. The next book I read was The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This one I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. It was very whimsical, but had a really deep message. So this one's about Linus Baker that goes to a orphanage for magical children, and he basically has to assess this orphanage to make sure that it is still fit to stay in business, basically. He works for the Department of Magical Youth. But yeah, this one I really enjoyed. I have a couple other books by TJ Klune, and I am looking forward to the sequel that's coming out in 2024. Next book that I read was Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This book, I loved it. I loved it so much. I honestly was unsure if I was gonna like it because I heard so many things about it. It is very toxic, but it's entertaining, so I was just like a little concerned if I would be like, what am I reading right now? But it was just really, really good. This was the first book that I ever annotated. I have a couple like highlighted quotes in here, and I originally bought this on my Kindle and I was like, no, I need the physical copy so I can annotate it. I really enjoyed this. I look forward to reading the rest of the series, and I know there's a couple, I think there's one last Magnolia Parks book, but a couple more Daisy Hates books coming out. I've only read the one, but I do have Daisy Hates on my physical TBR that I will get to in 2024. Alright, in books 19, 20, and 21, I read the Summer I Turned Pretty series. So we have The Summer I Turned Pretty, It's Not Summer Without You, and We'll Always Have Summer. I read these on my camping trip, so these were summer vibes all the way. Loved it. The whole series I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. It did its job. I feel like the first book was so good, and then the second and third book kind of took like a weird turn that I was like, oh, okay. I know it's a series now. I started watching the first episode. I think I got through like not even halfway, maybe like 10 minutes into the first episode. I'll definitely give it another chance. Not that it was bad. It was just, okay. I was kind of like over these characters. I do like it though. It's a YA. It's a summer romance. But the whole time I was like, Belly, just choose somebody, because she kept going back and forth and it kind of just got annoying. So she kind of annoyed me. But other than that, I did love the series, and again, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in 2023 was Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. This was my first Carly Fortune book. I really loved this one. Again, summer romance. I read it in the summertime. I connected with this book because it is a Canadian author. She has a cottage not far from where I go camping. So, or where I was camping. I camp a lot, so I go everywhere. But specifically, like, one of my favorite parks, her cottage is not far from that park. So I really connected with the story, like the landscape of the story. So this one meant so much to me. I didn't grow up in Canada, and I've only lived here for 3 years. I love the outdoors. Like, The Canadian wilderness is not like anything else. Like, it's so amazing and magical, and I really love it with my whole heart. So I really connected with the landscape of this story. I liked the romance in it. It was good. Nice, easy summer read. Did its job. Very, very much recommend. I recorded the rest of this video and it didn't record. So I'm going back to refilm it. But the 23rd book that I read this year was The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This one was really, really good. It was a 5 out of 5 for me. I love Riley Sager, like I've said many times in this video. But if you like true crime, if you know anything about the Lizzie Borden story, this is for you. This one's about Lenora Hope that witnessed her whole family get murdered in 1929. And then years later in 1983, she gets a caregiver named Kit who she decides to tell all to that night, like about that night. And she's never said a word about it before. So very interesting concept. And then you kind of find out that Kit and Lenora are intertwined in some way. Very interesting. 5 out of 5. Highly recommend if you're looking for a good thriller. The next book that I read was Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This one I gave 5 out of 5 stars. Again, I just love her writing. I love the setting. I really connected with it on that level. Great summer read, great romance. So if you're looking for that, I read this one on my Kindle, but it was very good. And I probably would buy the physical copy just to have the two of her books on my bookshelf. And then the 25th book that I read this year was The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. Again, I love him. I've read majority of his books. They are just such good thrillers. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. Next book that I read was A Court of Wings in Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. This one I gave 5 out of 5. I love the ACOTAR series, like I've said before. This one was my favorite, actually, of the whole series. I know everybody loves the second book, A Court of Mist and Fury, but I really love this one. I was intimidated by the size. It's almost 700 pages, or just over 700 pages, and I really enjoyed this one. I read this in a week, and I was shocked by that, but something just did it for me for this one. Like, I loved the politics in it, which is weird because I feel like I wasn't really gonna like it, but I loved the politics. I loved seeing Farah, just her growth from the beginning of the series till now, and I just really loved it. And I love Nesta and Cassian. Like, I cannot wait to read the last book in the series because it was just, this is where I became a Cassian girl. He's so cute, love him so much. Anyway, I gave that one 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm going to read the last book maybe in January. That's when I'm aiming to read it. And the next book that I read was A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. Again, part of the ACOTAR series. This one I gave 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay. You don't really need to read it. It's just a novella. It's just a little quick, light read with multi-point of view. So if you want more of the characters, I do recommend to read it. I just read it so I can say I read the whole series front to back. And it's probably a good winter read, so if you're reading the series now, this would be a good Christmassy read because it takes place around winter solstice for them. But nonetheless, I read it, and short and sweet. It was okay. The next book that I read was The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This one is the 4th book in the Inheritance Game series. And I love the Inheritance Game series, like the original 3. So good. I was looking so forward to this book, and I did enjoy it. I think I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. This one I had really high hopes for, and I know a lot of people did, and they were kind of let down. I still liked it, but I just loved Avery's point of view in the first 3 books, and this is Jameson and Grayson's point of view, which I like them, but I just really loved Avery, and I liked following her story. It was more interesting than this. Nonetheless, I still loved it. I love this series, I love the world, and I'm looking forward to The Grandest Game coming out next year. And then next, I read Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. Believe it or not, I've never read the Twilight books. I lived in peak Twilight time. I saw the movies in theaters. I was obsessed like every other girl. I feel like I was Team Edward. I honestly can't really remember, to be honest. It was quite a while ago. but I really enjoyed the book. I gave it 4 to 5 stars. I look forward to finishing the series in 2024. But the book actually surprised me because I feel like Bella and Edward are just different in the book than in the movie. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody that's read the book and seen the movie, but I just feel like they were different in a good way. I kind of liked them better in the book than in the movie, to be fair. It was good. Did its job. I read it in the fall time. Gave fall vibes. Loved it. The next book that I read was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was a little nervous to read a Taylor Jenkins Reid book because I know a lot of booktubers that I watch, they either love or hate her, or love one of her books or hate one of her books. But this one was really good. It really surprised me. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I loved the concept of the old Hollywood glam and lifestyle. Very interesting to me. Basically, this one's about Evelyn Hugo, who is a huge movie star from the 50s, and she does a tell-all interview and specifically selects the interviewer. She's very specific on who she wants it to be and she wants to write it. To tell her story, basically. The main question of the interview is, who is her greatest love? Out of all her 7 husbands, who was her greatest love? So the concept is very interesting. Again, it's written kind of like an interview. And I know Daisy Jones and the Six is kind of written like that. I haven't read that one, but this made me want to pick up more Taylor Jenkins Reid books. Just really good, very unique idea, and I very much enjoyed it. I bought Malibu Rising because that one's connected to this world, and it just really made me want to read it, and I look forward to reading it in 2024. The next book that I read was Bunny by Mona Awad. This has been on my TBR for so long, and I just needed to knock it off. Very weird book. I think I gave this 4 out of 5. I'd probably give it 3 out of 5 now looking back on it, but it was very odd. Never read a book like this in my life. It was so interesting, very interesting concept, very weird. At times hard to understand, but I got the gist after getting at least halfway through of it. But yeah, if you are looking for a weird, interesting read around Halloween, I would probably recommend this one because it's just so odd. So odd, but it was good. The 32nd book that I read this year was The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This one was so good. It was a romance with a magical element. I read this around Halloween time. It was so good. I loved these characters. I liked the concept. It was very interesting and unique, and I then bought The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston because I've heard a lot of rave reviews about it, so I'm looking forward to reading that next year. But this one is very good. I kind of guessed what was happening halfway through, just the way that things were happening. I'm like, okay, this is the only thing that makes sense. It just follows a girl that goes back to her hometown dealing with grief, and then she can also see ghosts, and her family owned a funeral home, so she kind of grew up with this reputation of the girl that can see ghosts, and then she one day sees her editor in a ghost form, and she's like, oh, what happened to you? And it's kind of a romance that blooms between the two of them. This one made me so giddy at the end. I was so happy. This one's just a cute romance read if you're looking for that. Then I read The Outsider by Stephen King. This one I did a whole reading vlog on. It's when I first started YouTube, and you can watch that video. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was thicker than it needed to be, but nonetheless, I love Stephen King, so I still had to read it. This one is not too much horror. It's more true crime with supernatural elements. I feel like it was longer than it needed to be, again, like I said, but I still enjoyed it, especially around the fall time. There are sensitive topics in here, though, and really strong language, so I definitely look up trigger warnings before you read it. Again, I did a whole reading vlog on this one, so you can check that out. And then The House in the Pines, I also did a reading vlog on this one. This one I gave 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay. Again, nothing to write home about. I did a whole reading vlog, you can check that out. But it was just okay. It was interesting concept with the twist. I didn't really see that coming, but other than that, it was just, And then after The House in the Pines, I read my favorite books of the year, and that's One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. Oh, that was One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. These books changed my life. I gave them 6 stars. So good. This duology is so good. I cannot stop raving about it. This I also did a video on, so check that out. But I just loved these books so much. They were so good. Highly recommend. The ending, bittersweet. I really wish there was another book coming out, but I hope it gets made into a television series, a movie, something, please, because it was so good. The last book, my 38th book that I am currently reading, is The Book Hotel, and that one is a Christmassy read. I'm more leaning towards 3 out of 5 stars. It's okay, I like the setting, it's cozy, but there are points in time where I'm like, okay, this is way too long than it needs to be. Other than that, it's good. I aim to read at least 2 more Christmas reads, so I can hopefully end the year out at 40 books. I have a couple more weeks, so fingers crossed I can get through them. That's all I have for you. That was my 2023 reads. My goal for 2024 is going to be 40 books, so hopefully I can reach that. That would be so amazing, and I can't wait to see what 2024 brings and the books that I'll get to. Like, I'm so excited. I have so many books on my physical TBR. That's gonna be my goal, is to knock off all those books, and there's a lot of anticipated reads for 2024, so I'm very excited. If you got this far in the video, I thank you so much for watching and sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!